who's as adamant about his or her position as I am about mine, whom you think is sharp. Seriously, we know that. And another thing, we heard him say that... Larry Elder here, also known as the Great Eldersky, and welcome back to another edition of And Another Thing. It's episode number 19. If you want information on how to subscribe to become an Eldorado, go to my website, larryelder.com, fill out the form. All new Eldorados will get a free copy of Michael and Me, my award-winning documentary that talks about the Second Amendment. More on that in short order. Today, let's talk about the Wall Street Journal article that Juan Williams of Fox. The reason I'm laughing is because Juan Williams is a left-wing guy on Fox. And he's there to give that left-wing perspective. And what he is a left-wing Democrat who's clueless about the damage that's been done by the very policies that he espouses. For example, in the article, Juan Williams properly connected the dots between not having a father in the house and gun violence. He talks about the fact that back in 1965, 25% or so of black kids were born outside of wedlock. That number now is tripled. In 1960, 5% of all children of all races were born outside of wedlock in this country, and that number now is 48%. Direct relationship between not having a father in the house and a whole bunch of social ills, whether it's dropouts, whether it's unemployment, and yet whether it's gun violence. One of the things that Juan Williams mentions is that homicide is the #1 preventable cause of death of young black men between the ages of around 25 to 35 years of age. And so Juan Williams understands the what. The problem is he doesn't understand the why. The why is the welfare state and the incentives that we've been giving women and men to make bad moral decisions and to abandon their financial and moral responsibilities. Bill Cosby calls such men unwed fathers. Juan Williams understands the damage done to our society by not having a dad in the home, but he doesn't understand why all of a sudden all these black kids and brown kids and white kids are born outside of wedlock. And the answer is money. We've given them financial incentives to make bad decisions. Since Lyndon Johnson launched his so-called war on poverty in 1965, we have spent about $16 trillion. That's the size of the annual U.S. economy on welfare. And what has happened? We've seen an explosion in the number of kids born outside of wedlock. Now, how do we know that the generosity of the welfare state has contributed to this? Because we asked the poor. In the 80s, the LA Times asked both poor people and non-poor people the following question. Do you believe that young women often or sometimes have children to get additional benefits? This was asked of both poor people and non-poor people, and not too surprisingly, because America is so compassionate, only 44% of the non-poor people believe that young poor women often had children to get additional benefits. However, when poor people were asked, 64% of poor people said yes, young poor women often have children to get additional benefits. Now, all I'm saying is these are poor people telling us what's going on. Meanwhile, the elites are not listening. So Juan Williams understands that not having a father in the house will have all sorts of bad consequences, but he doesn't understand why. And until we understand the why, we can't deal with how to change this thing. And the why, as I mentioned, are all these policies: food stamps, AFDC, daycare vouchers, public housing. You add it all up in every single one of our states, all 50 states, including Alaska and Hawaii, it is a better deal for a mother of two to be on welfare than to get a minimum wage job. She makes more money being on welfare than if she were to take a minimum wage job as a mother of two people. There's something terribly wrong about this. And poor Mitt Romney clumsily tried to talk about it when he said that 44% of Americans don't pay any money in federal income taxes. And they don't. And the problem, he says, and I believe it, is that if you don't have skin in the game, then it's okay to walk into the voting booth and pull that lever to increase taxes on somebody else's dime, to get a raise on somebody else's check. That's a real problem, and Mitt Romney was trying to talk about that when he said 47%. And of course, the left-wing media doesn't like Republicans, so they tortured that comment. And so that became not a statement of analysis of where I should be marshaling my resources. Since 44% of people don't pay federal income taxes, why should I make the argument that I'm going to lower federal income taxes because this 44% won't matter? That's what Romney was trying to argue. Instead, that became twisted, and now all of a sudden Mitt Romney is a cold, uncaring guy who only cares about the 44% and couldn't give a rip about the 53%. That's how that was tortured into the explanation of the 47%. Unfair, but as we all know, anybody on the right or let me put it like this, anybody on the non-left has to deal with what I call the trio, the axis of liberalism. And that's the media, that's Hollywood, and that's academia. Academia overwhelmingly to the left, the media overwhelmingly to the left, and if you look at Hollywood, to the extent that executives make contributions to either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, 90% or so of the contributions to the 90% or so of the Hollywood's contributions will go to the Democratic Party, 80% minimum. And so this is what we're up against. And so Juan Williams, bright guy, on Fox, he's their go-to liberal guy, and he understands that not having a father in the home is damaging. He understands that the percentage of kids born outside of wedlock has grown up. He understands it is disproportionately more serious in the black community, but he doesn't understand why. Because he's gone into that voting booth probably for his whole adult career and pulled that lever for the very people who have pushed policies that have gotten us into this place right now. In order for Juan Williams to look into the mirror and say, I was wrong, requires huge guts, requires somebody to sit there and look at his own policies and be willing to have the review and to rethink his assumptions. That is something most adult people never do. Renee from Boulder, Colorado asks the following questions. However, how come we can't have a law that says if a person commits any crime with a gun, regardless of whether it is used or not, or whether they're found to have an illegally concealed gun on them, or even caught stealing a gun, this person would get a mandatory 10 years, and that would have to be served in full on top of any other penalties assessed by the judge. This approach would seem to target 100% criminals while not infringing on the rights of law-abiding citizens. What do you think that a state law like that would do? Well, Renee, I'm all in favor of enhancing the penalties for the use of guns, and that is one of the reasons why we have so many people behind bars right now. As you probably know, we have almost 2 million people behind bars. I think it's the largest number of people behind bars of any country, I think, except China, but I'm not even sure about that. I know that in the non-communist industrialized world, America has more prisoners than any other country does. And part of that is because we've been putting people behind bars longer. That's why you've seen the trend lines on crime going down. It isn't necessarily so much that police tactics have improved, although I think they have, and they've gotten smarter. It is that we've gotten more serious about putting bad people behind bars longer. The longer a person is behind bars, the less he can commit crimes. Most criminals repeat offend, and if you keep them in longer, they have less time to repeat offend. And the older somebody— I hope you enjoyed this small excerpt. If you want to see the full video, got to be in El Dorado. Go to my website, LarryElder.com, log in, fill out the form. It'll cost you about $4.75 a month, or about the price of a mocha frappuccino latte at your favorite coffee house. As you can tell, I don't like coffee. I'm a tea drinker. See you next time.